Screens are everywhere, and let's face it, they're not going away anytime soon. Whether it's TV, tablets, video games, or smartphones, screens are part of our daily lives. And if you have a reluctant reader at home, it can feel like books are constantly competing for their attention. Now I know this struggle all too well. You see, over the summer, we hit a bit of a breaking point with screens in our house. JD was sneaking screen time every chance he got. He even tried creeping downstairs at my in-laws' house in the middle of the night to find his tablet. He nearly gave my mother-in-law a heart attack. Meanwhile, Hunter had gotten so hooked on screens that he started demanding game time at bedtime instead of books. Now you know that was a hard no from me. And on top of that, both were having full-blown meltdowns when it was time to turn off a game. So, bottom line, I knew we had to make some serious changes, that we had to set clearer expectations and really figure out what would work for our family. But here's the thing. I don't want you to always see screens as the enemy. They don't have to be. When used intentionally, technology can actually spark an interest in reading. It can make books more accessible, engaging, and interactive for kids who normally wouldn't pick one up. So today we're talking about finding that balance, how to stop screens from feeling like the competition, and how to start using them as a tool to support your kiddo's reading journey. By the end of this episode, you'll walk away feeling confident about how to balance screen time with reading without the constant battles. I'll be sharing ways to use technology to get kids excited about books instead of always feeling like you're fighting against it. And of course, I'll give you some simple screen time boundaries that actually work, because let's be honest, just saying turn it off doesn't always go over well. So if you're tired of screens winning the battle for your child's attention, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. Now, I want to preface this by saying I never really saw screens as the enemy, but I did know what TV, movies, and video games had done to my own interest in reading, and I didn't want my boys to fall into that same pattern. For the longest time, screens weren't a huge problem in our house. Sure, we watched TV together as a family, and they had access to their tablets here and there. But it wasn't until this past year that I really started seeing the impact technology was having on our family firsthand. It wasn't just that screens were competing with books, it was that our tech boundaries weren't clearly laid out and the balance was all off. But here's the thing. If you can't beat them, join them. Rather than treating screens as something that we need to eliminate, what if we use them as a tool? With the right approach, screens can actually help foster a love of reading. Now that might sound a bit counterintuitive, but hear me out. There are many screen-based resources that can support literacy. Interactive eBooks like the ones on Epic, Skybrary, or even the monster at the end of this book app. They bring stories to life in a way that can make books feel more engaging, not less. Word games like Wordscapes, Wordle, Boggle with Friends, and crossword puzzles build vocabulary and critical thinking skills without kids even realizing they're practicing literacy. And of course, audiobooks are one of my favorite ways to bring more stories into daily life. Apps like Libby, Hoopla, and Overdrive let you access audiobooks for free through your library. And devices like Tony and Yoda players give younger kids a screen-free way to listen to stories on their own. So instead of trying to eliminate screens altogether, the goal is to be intentional about how they're used, because when used the right way, technology can actually support a love of reading, not take away from it. And if you're looking for more screen-friendly ways to encourage reading, I'm always sharing tips and recommendations over on social media. Now let's talk about the part that's a little trickier, setting screen time boundaries that actually work. I've definitely learned the hard way that having screen time boundaries is one thing, actually enforcing them, that's a whole different story. I've gone through seasons where I thought we had a pretty good handle on screen time, only to realize, little by little, that things had gotten way out of balance all over again. Over the summer, it became very clear that we needed to reset our entire approach to technology in our home. So if you're struggling with screen time, the first step is to figure out what's causing the biggest issues. For us, mornings used to be one of those problem areas. Back when JD had a later school start time, we experimented with allowing screens in the mornings. And let me tell you, that was a terrible idea. It caused way too much drama, too many fights, and honestly, I don't think it set the best tone for the day. Once we completely cut morning screen time out on school days, we noticed a big improvement in focus, and there was a lot less stress getting out the door. Now, does that mean we never do screens in the morning? No, not necessarily. On a slow weekend morning, if the boys ask me to read, I'll sometimes pull out my phone and access Epic so we can read an old favorite together. But in general, we do our best to delay screens as long as possible so they have more time to play, read, and just be kids. The second big shift we made was setting clear expectations. I've learned that screen time rules need to be crystal clear, especially with the younger kids. If I'm not clear on the front end, I can't be surprised when they push back later. For example, during JD's recent remote learning day, I told him up front that once he finished his schoolwork, he could have 30 minutes of Minecraft, and after that, he had a choice: turn the tablet off, or he could use an extra 20 to 30 minutes on Zern. That's a math app that he really enjoys. Now, because I set the expectation ahead of time, there was no argument when the timer went off. Meanwhile, I made the mistake of not setting clear expectations with Hunter. I let him play Starfall on a school tablet, but I didn't set a timer or talk to him beforehand about what would happen when screen time was over. So when I told him that it was time to stop, we had a complete meltdown. That experience reinforced what I already knew. Structure and consistency are everything when it comes to screen time. Now, the third piece of the puzzle is getting the whole family involved in setting these boundaries. We've had family meetings about screen time before, and I'll be honest, not all of them have been super successful. When we tried last summer, we struggled to get on the same page, and our first attempt at setting tech boundaries didn't stick. But now that we're all on board, we've been able to have a much better balance. The boys know what to expect, and while sometimes we still get pushback, because let's face it, they're kids and they're still adjusting, it's better than it was before. And they have a say. They had buy-in, so they're willing to respect those boundaries a lot more than if I had just said, this is how it's going to be. So if screen time has been a battle in your house, one of the best things you can do is sit down and have that family meeting. Have an open conversation about it. A family meeting gives everyone a chance to share their thoughts, and when kids feel like they have a say in the rules, they're much more likely to respect them. So what should you talk about? First, decide when and where screens and tech can and can't be used. Maybe you want to keep meals screen-free, limit personal devices in the bedrooms, or set a rule that screens aren't used right before bed. These kinds of boundaries help create balance and make sure screen time isn't interfering with family time, sleep, or other important activities. Next, you want to set some guidelines for what types of screen time are okay and what's off limits. Not all screen time is created equal, so this is a chance to talk about which apps, games, shows are allowed, and which ones aren't. Some families allow educational apps anytime, but limit things like YouTube or social media. Others may be fine with certain types of video games, but want to avoid ones that feel too consuming. The goal here is to be clear on what's acceptable so there's no confusion later. Okay, now let's talk about time limits. How much screen time will be allowed per day? How much of that can be games or videos versus other activities? Will you allow them extra time if it's educational or reading related? Decide what makes sense for your family and how are you going to enforce it, whether that's setting timers, using parental controls on the devices, or both. If you have clear expectations up front, it can help avoid that pushback later on. At the end of the day, the goal isn't to eliminate screens, it's to create a balance that works for your family. Also, one thing I found really helpful is making sure I model the same boundaries I expect from my kids for myself. If they see me constantly glued to my phone, it's a lot harder to convince them that screen time should be limited. So I try to be mindful about putting my phone away during family time, especially at meals or before bed, because let's be real, kids pick up on everything we do. And if you're looking for more ideas on setting boundaries or handling pushback, I've got even more tips over on the Engaging Reluctant Readers blog. I'll drop the link in the show notes. Okay, now that we've talked about having clear boundaries and expectations, let's talk about fun ways to blend screens and books so that it's not a battle between them. One of the easiest ways to get kids excited about books is to turn reading into a game, and there are so many ways to do that with tech. For example, my kids have used Beanstack, which is an app that lets them track their reading streaks. They hit milestones, and the boys use it for their school quarterly reading challenges, but they also have public challenges inside the app too. This keeps the kids motivated outside of what their school assigns. And then there's Epic, which turns reading into a reward system. The more they read, the more reading buddies and badges they unlock. And trust me, those tiny rewards can be huge motivators. For younger kids who are still building a foundation in reading, apps like Teach Your Monster to Read can make phonics and letter recognition feel like a game. It's a great way to reinforce what they're learning without it feeling like extra work. And sometimes that little shift in how reading is presented can make all the difference. Beyond those apps, you can also make reading feel more interactive by creating scavenger hunts or bingo game boards, but with a tech twist. Instead of just saying, go read a book, maybe they need to find and read an ebook instead of a physical one, or listen to an audiobook and follow along with the text. They could watch a YouTube review of a book to help decide if it's worth adding to their to-be read list, or they can even use a library app like Libby or Hoopla to borrow a digital book that they're excited about. Tech-driven challenges turn reading into an adventure instead of a boring to-do. Sometimes the real challenge isn't that kids don't like the stories, it's that they see reading as a boring activity where they have to sit down and stare at a bunch of words on a page. If that's the case, audiobooks and podcasts can be a game changer for your child. At the beginning of the school year, our Yodo Player was a big part of our after-school routine. The boys would listen to an audiobook while they had their snack, and it gave them a chance to unwind without immediately zoning out in front of a TV. It was such a simple way to fit in more stories without making it feel like homework. Now, we've fallen out of that habit since our routine changed with Hunter starting Taekwondo, but I'd love to find a way to work it back in again. And then there are kids' podcasts, which are another great way to make stories feel exciting. Storytopia is a fun one if you're looking for something new to try. Whether it's listening to a story together in a car, having an audiobook night as a family, or even just playing a podcast while doing a puzzle, these little shifts can help kids connect with stories in a way that don't feel like traditional reading. Now, if your child is constantly saying, I can't find anything to read, flip the script. Have them create their own story instead. There are so many cool tools out there that let kids bring their own stories to life. Apps like Story Jumper let them design and illustrate their own digital books. Story Dice is a fun one for generating creative story ideas. Then you can use Canva to help them put their ideas together in a way that looks and feels like a real book. And if they need a little extra help coming up with ideas, ChatGPT can be a great brainstorming tool. They can type in a prompt like, "Give me 3 ideas for a story about a kid who finds a secret door," or even ask for help expanding on an idea they already have. It's a great way to take the intimidation factor out of writing and help them get started. Now, I've actually been hoping to do this with JD now that he's back on board with reading. I'd love to help him create a short book that he can read to Hunter. It'd be a fun bonding activity for both of them, and I know JD would love seeing his own story come to life. And the best part, when kids create their own stories, they can't really say they don't like them because they wrote them. Bottom line, screens don't have to compete with books. They can actually support reading, whether it's gamifying reading, using tech to make books more engaging, or helping kids bring their own stories to life. The right tools can give kids a leg up and make reading feel like an easy yes, even for reluctant readers. Okay, now let's talk about what to do when you have a screen first kid, one who would rather literally do anything on a device rather than pick up a book. If that sounds familiar, first, you're not alone. Some kids just naturally gravitate towards screens, whether it's video games, YouTube, or their favorite apps. The instant engagement and feedback they get from technology makes books fall flat in comparison. Second, the goal here isn't just to take screens away. It's about easing them toward reading in ways that don't feel like a chore. If they're glued to their devices, the first step is to break the habit of always reaching for a screen. Not by forcing books right away, but by giving them engaging hands-on activities that naturally build literacy skills without feeling like reading time. One of the best ways to do this is through screen-free storytelling. If they love movies and video games, challenge them to make up their own stories. Ask, what happens next? What if the main character made a different choice? If you were in the story, what would you do? This works great during car rides, mealtime, or even bedtime. And if they love being hands-on, have them draw comic strips, act out scenes with toys, or create their own puppet show. We'll be practicing sequencing, vocabulary, and comprehension without ever picking up a book. For younger kids still working on their foundational literacy skills, keep it sensory. You can have them write letters in the sand or shape words out of Play-Doh. Another great way to sneak literacy skills in is board games like Scrabble, Boggle, Apples to Apples, Pictionary, Zingo, and Bananagrams Jr. They all get kids thinking about words in a fun, low-pressure way, and even scavenger hunts where they have to read and follow clues can help build those reading muscles in a way that feels like play, not work. Then there's real-life reading, finding ways to help them use reading and writing in everyday situations. If they love make-believe, have them create their own menu for a pretend restaurant and take orders from family members or stuffed animals that are dining in. If they enjoy planning and organizing, let them be in charge of writing a schedule for a family outing or a day of fun. For more structured writing, they can send letters to a family member or a pen pal. They can start a monthly family newsletter and share all your latest adventures. Or they can even keep a diary or a journal. Whether it's a travel journal, a daily diary, or a gratitude journal, there's so many ways to make writing a natural part of their world. The goal isn't to force it. It's about naturally weaving reading and writing into their everyday experiences, so they're building those skills without even thinking about it. And finally, if you're feeling stuck or need more ideas, I'm always sharing fun literacy building activities over on social media. If you're on Facebook, be sure to check out my group, Engaging Reluctant Readers Tribe, where you can crowdsource ideas from other parents who are in the same boat as you. Don't worry, I'll drop the link in the show notes. So remember, balancing screen time with reading isn't about all or nothing. It's about intentionality, creating boundaries around technology that work for your whole family. So pick one strategy from this episode and give it a try. If it works, great, keep going. If not, tweak it until you find what fits. The key is to focus on progress, not perfection. Every little shift you make can help create a better balance. Until next time, happy reading. Okay, if you've ever noticed your kid binge watching the same TV show over and over, then you already know the power of a great series. But did you know the same just one more episode effect can work for books too? In the next episode, we're diving into the series effect, how book series can turn reluctant readers into eager ones, why they're such a game changer, and how to find the right series to hook your kid. Be sure to hit follow so you're the first to know when the new episode drops.